quick one. Kindly take us through the key highlights of what happened in court today from the beginning till the judgment was given to Wontumi.
Right. So thank you very much, Gifty, for having me, and good afternoon to our viewers. So this morning in court, the defense reminded the court of an application made before the court on the 29th when the case was adjourned that was intended to defer judgment. And when that was brought before the court's attention, this is what Justice Shremsai, the DAG, said. The registrar of this court has brought to my attention a letter dated 17th July 2026, signed by Charles Boache, seeking an adjustment of the applications stated or slated for hearing today. The reason given is that substantive counsel is currently out of the jurisdiction. And this is what the court said. On 29th, in the presence of counsel, the court adjourned the matter to today. If the date was unsuitable, counsel could have consulted the court for a different date to be fixed. The date was fixed with the express consent of counsel. Today's date was not imposed on counsel. Counsel was present in court and agreed to today's date. The proposed date, 22nd July, is not convenient for the court. But let me jump quickly to the court's response to that and how the court dealt with the matter. A party who files an application need not necessarily be present to move it before the court. Once an application is filed and comes before the court on the return date, it is properly before the court, and the court may determine it on its merit. I therefore deem the application properly filed before the court. In the opinion of the court, the application is without merit and ought to be dismissed. The application is accordingly dismissed. And that was Judge Tetevi Kukuvite's reaction to that. And so the application to defer judgment was dismissed as being without merit. Okay. Then came the judgment itself. So Judge Kukuvite went through the various counts as you have highlighted in your intro. And on each count, the judge said categorically that this matter, witnesses has been called to and evidence adduced. And in short, everything else the two parties have brought before the court found merit and court found evidence in the charges as preferred against Wontumi and Akunta Mining. So on count 1 and 3, as you have said, the accused person was found guilty, and he was sentenced 20 years. Plus some penalty points to be paid. And the interesting thing is when the charges or the sentencing was ongoing, suddenly the courtroom felt dead silent. Okay. And you could see those in support of Wontumi, some party members I saw whose names I don't have to necessarily mention on air, you could clearly tell that it is either they knew it was coming, okay, but the 20 years took every one of them by surprise, and so
it was too much.
In their view, that was too much. In fact, after that, I spoke to Wontumi, one of the lawyers in defense of Wontumi, who categorically said, honestly, that took every one of them by surprise. They even tried in court to present some sentencing mitigation to reconsider that, but then the court delivered its sentence, and that was what it was. And so I asked whether or not there was going to be any move to appeal the decision, and he said, well, as I can see, they are not happy with the outcome. And so by all means, the constitution of this land allows them to appeal through the courts of appeal all the way to the Supreme Court. And so then the impression has been created that by all means, this is going to go the long haul.
But let's look at the demeanor of Wontumi when he was given 20 years with hard labor.
The man himself obviously is always on high spirits. But something shifted quickly when, because when the judgment was being read, I mean, they were all laid back. Everybody was calm. They were keenly listening to the judgment until came sentencing. And when it was pronounced, the demeanor suddenly changed, because I thought what didn't sink in for him was whether he was going to do 24 Akunta Mining's guilty, because I mean he is as good as his company, and so whether he was going to do 40 until then the idea of concurrent running of the
Okay.
sentencing came. Even that did not calm him. The man suddenly changed, and clearly the accounts will say, Bibia Pembemabo. All that, you know, I spoke to a few people whose names, again, I would not mention on air, and clearly you can tell it is not as quiet as some people would want to have us believe.
Okay, let's look at, after the judgment, outside the court premises, let's look at supporters. What were some of the conversations they were having after the ruling?
Right, so supporters were hugely disappointed. Some of the, you know, political rhetoric they were reading into that, I would not regurgitate on air, but clearly some supporters were disappointed. But then there were a few women who were huddled together, and they were proper crying, wailing, as if Wontumi had died. And I went close to them and I was like, well, maybe you didn't understand the sentence. And one said,
yeah.
You understand? And so I was like, okay, maybe I don't really understand what you feel or what he means to you, but then this particular sentiment, it says everything it is. And then you move to party hierarchy. One of the young men who recently is speaking for Wontumi in his bid to become the Ashanti Regional, the national chairman for the party, a very popular face on television. And on the sides of the court, I spoke to a lawyer whom you'll be very surely speaking to. I wouldn't give his name away, but very surely he will be speaking to GBC News. I remember mentioning to him that today I have seen what every man will fight to avoid. That this particular individual, to shed tears in court, on the front court of the courthouse, is nothing, is not a thing that any man would want to see. And for me, that spoke huge volumes about what the immediate circle of Wontumi is considering, what they're doing currently, how this is affecting them. And I'm also looking at the bigger picture, which then involves the party itself. And I'm not surprised that before I joined you in studio, there was a news from the party's headquarters that there is a certain emergency meeting involving the flag bearer to consider their next line of action. And so, as I mentioned earlier, clearly, if the court is done with its job, I guess the real deal is about to start.
I also watched a bit of the AG. He had a quick interview. What was his reaction, and what does it mean for him as a government official handling this particular case? Right.
The deputy AG has a certain history of not losing cases. He personally doesn't like. And so if the matter is one that is a 50-50, he would rather not do it. And so when he came out of court, interestingly, I was the first journalist to approach him at the doors, at the entrance of the court. And I asked him, my usual way of approaching such matters was, DAG, is this justice in your eyes? Has justice been served? And he looked at me and gave me a certain smile to say, if you don't know, then I don't know what you're trying to find out. And so I then asked him again that, DAG, again, this goes to show that you are working. Is that what you want the public to believe, that at least you have secured a certain conviction? Does that mean you're working really? And he said, well, if you say that is working and conviction means I have worked, then I have worked.
Thank you so much, Daryl, for the update. And that was our correspondent, Alan Tego, who brought us all that happened in court today. And you're still watching News Hour on GBC News and GTV. Away from that story. Now, to help us unpack the legal implications of the ruling, we are joined